earlier, just to recap from what we read today, the theme of recognition is very important. You know, I've been teaching the way into the synagogue for me, also for Leslie, a long time ago, believe it or not, was reading Torah, but also as a bar and bat mitzvah tutor, something that we enjoy doing and to this day. And I don't want to speak for Leslie, but for myself, one of the aggravations, one of the moments that just like, as a teacher, like, is when a kid makes a mistake, it's fine. I've got kids who are always saying, sorry, or apologizing. Stop apologizing. Listen, it's not making a mistake the first time that makes a tutor cringe. It's when you correct it, and then they make the same mistake right away, right after. Am I right? It's a tough moment as a tutor. You're just like,
It's different for everybody, you know?
I won't put Leslie on the spot, but I'll tell you, just to get into what we're talking about here. In my life, I feel like when it comes to a lot of things, I really do feel this way. I feel like I don't have great instincts, that I need to be shown, especially when it's something new. I do much better when I'm shown how to do something. I can pick it up, I can do it, I have something to model, I have something to repeat. I have a lot of trouble getting things right the first time on my own. But I think that this is kind of life. I think that that's one of the tricks, is it's not so much that you're allowed to make mistakes. I think that we need to accept that we are going to make mistakes. And a lot of times when we try something the first time, man, I'm not talking about like a total mistake, a complete abject failure, disaster, but something that can be improved on, right? And the lesson that I learned throughout my life, don't dwell on not getting it right the first time. In spite of what Billy Joel says, getting it right the first time is not the main thing. Get it right the next time. When you're presented in that situation again, did you learn? This is why with my bar mitzvah students, I say, don't make the same mistake a second time. Let's work on fixing that mistake. Making it the first time, who cares? But let's fix it. It's all about recognizing when you're in that similar situation. So, now I think you know where I'm going. Brings us back to our Torah story. It's been 20 years since the brothers last saw Joseph. He was a teenager. They were a lot younger. They were mad at him. They were jealous. They had a lot of feelings. They threw him in a pit. They sold him to a group of people passing by. They faked his death. They got rid of him. As you can see from one of the comments in the Torah reading today, actually, they've been harboring guilt, because there's no reason why when they appear in front of this vizier in Egypt that they should be thinking about that. There's nothing that they don't know that this is Joseph. They have no idea. But the fact that they are thinking, oh, this is finally catching up to us, they've been harboring guilt ever since that happened 20 years ago. So a lot of people wonder what Joseph's up to when he creates this elaborate ruse. Why not just reveal himself and reunite? Why? Why throw them in jail for 3 days? Why talk to them deliberately harshly? Why accuse them of being spies? Why keep one of the brothers captive and send them back and say, don't come back until you bring the other brother? Why do all this? I mentioned it before. It's because Joseph really needed to know if they'd changed. I think Joseph's entitled not to be so quick to forgive them. They threw him in a pit. They faked his death. They told their dad that he was gone. Joseph's probably, I guess, not happy, but when he hears that they're guilty about it, when he sees that they're guilty about it, if he overhears them, which we see he overhears them, he probably gives them a good feeling, but he doesn't know for sure that they've changed. One of the marks, and I think there's a note in this in the Etz Chaim Chumash about tshuva, really changing, really repenting. There's the re in there. There's an opportunity to act a different way when you're faced with a similar situation. Joseph's whole situation, this whole ruse that he establishes, he throws them in jail like they threw him in a pit. He separates Shimon. He takes away another brother to see what they'll do. He forces them to go back and negotiate with their dad to bring Binyamin. He recreates a situation that is very, very similar. That's why there's so many callbacks in this parsha to what happened in last week's parsha to 20 years ago. There's a story in Genesis that's super famous earlier in the book about Avraham, his last test. We read it every year on Rosh Hashanah. And I've studied this a lot. It fascinates me, as it fascinates a lot of people, the binding of Isaac. And a lot of people ask, well, why didn't Avraham kick up a fight with God when God said to him to go offer up Isaac? And it's because I think I've always been convinced that Avraham knew all along it was a test, that he knew something was up because the situation, the way God presented it to him, reminded him of something that had happened earlier in his life. Only once ever did God call Avraham and say, Lech lecha. He said, Lech lecha, me'artzecha, mimoladetcha, mibeit avicha. Go for yourself. This odd expression, leave, and then 3 degrees. Me'artzecha, from your land, mimoladetcha, from your family, mibeit avicha, from your father's house. And later, when he calls him to sacrifice Isaac, he started off by saying, Lech lecha. Take it bincha, et yechidcha, asher ahavta, 3 degrees. And go, and before it was go to the land I will show you, go to the place that I will show you. Avraham knew. He's like, I've heard this before. He recognized the familiarity, the similarity of the situation. And I've been convinced ever since that that's why Avraham doesn't kick up a fuss the way he did for strangers in Sodom and Gomorrah, is because he knew, okay, before God called me like this one other time, and things were pretty good after that. I need to have a little bit of faith. I need to see what's going on here. I'm not actually going to have to offer up my son. That's at least my theory. And I bring it up here because Joseph was trying to send cues to his brothers to see if they would recognize. We know they didn't recognize him. He only recognized them. The question is, were they going to recognize the situation? And that 20 years later, when they were put to a test to stand up in solidarity for a single brother, were they going to just leave Shimon in Egypt? Were they going to be able to go and bring Binyamin back with them? He was creating a situation for them to prove that they had changed, that they had actually done tshuva. Making a mistake the first time, like I said, it's not so much that we're allowed to, but it's going to happen. The second time, that's where you really have an opportunity to demonstrate that you've learned, that you have changed, that you have grown, right? I see this all the time. It happens to me all the time in my life. I think this happens to us a lot, particularly in our personal relationships. People who are very close with, family, friends, they say things that trigger us, and we know we've been down this road before, and yet we get into an argument again. We get into an argument again. We're driving in the car. We know that we're going to have problems when it comes to directions if we get a little bit lost. And rather than handle the situation differently and try and learn from the past experience, we're in a situation again, and yet I find myself saying the same things I always used to say. And then we get into an argument. Why didn't I learn from it? Because it's hard. It's hard, but it's doable. And it's funny because, you know, in the Haftarah, it's this great example of Shlomo, King Shlomo, who's incredibly wise. You know, he was gifted wisdom by God. Was it so much that he was wise in this moment, or was it that he just understood human nature? It's very easy to understand and see human nature in other humans. It's recognizing it in ourselves. Sometimes it's a little bit more difficult, especially in the moment. But it can be done. Joseph is putting his brothers in a situation hoping that they will demonstrate it when they get this second chance. And next week's Parsha, we'll see how this unfolds when Joseph accuses Binyamin and says he has to stay back. Judah and the brothers stand up and they defend and they show that they have learned, they show compassion, they show self-sacrifice. They demonstrate to Joseph that really a reunion is possible, that they are capable of and have done their form of tshuva. You know, there's a great line from Albert Einstein that you probably know, that to do the same thing, I'll paraphrase, but to do the same thing over and over and over and over again and expect different results is the definition of insanity. So recognizing the situation, recognizing that we've been here before, and maybe last time we didn't act in the best way. We didn't get it right. But wait, this situation in front of me right now is a lot like that, and now I can learn, I can change, I can act differently and influence the outcome. That's what I've been thinking about with this week's Parsha. I hope it's a message that makes sense to all of you, and that the next time you, like when I try and find myself, particularly in our personal relationships and familiar situations where maybe we didn't act so great in the past, that we can accept this challenge of trying to do our own tshuva, not just once a year, but all the time. When we get these second chances, we get these new opportunities, just like Joseph's brothers did, maybe without recognizing it right away. Shabbat Shalom.